Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. Joined with Anthony. Andrew is waiting in the wings. I'm assuming he's going to be here in a few minutes. But Anthony, how is Friday treating you?
Friday is treating me good. We got our first dose of college football action yesterday. Well, I guess technically we got it last week, but like real week one college football has officially begun yesterday. We got some games tonight, and then we've got a huge slate on tap for tomorrow. So big couple days here, and we are celebrating in the Russo household by not getting dressed and eating a lot and drinking, and it's a good time here.
Yeah, so we are going to be doing a mock draft. We're going to see if Andrew pops in within the next minute or two. Yeah, there he is. Speak of the devil. We weren't sure if we were going to do the mock draft of my simulator before we discussed yours, Andrew. So you came in the nick of time.
I had to go to the bathroom before Anthony beat the piss out of me, so I wanted to make sure I had an empty bladder, so there was nothing too bad.
Well, and you two haven't podcasted together before, have you?
No. I just know Anthony as the legendary draft wit.
I appreciate that, even though I don't agree with it. But
well, what I like about podcasting with Anthony is that he can, let's say, see the vision. So even if he doesn't agree with a pick, he can still find something nice to say about it.
See, and that's what doesn't exist anywhere. Like today when he was talking about Trevor with his board, and it was funny because I had quit watching before they got to the top 10 because I was like, their top 10 is going to be the same as everybody else's. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to finish it. And ironically, he sold me on finishing watching it. And then I was like, okay. And then I was like, oh, hey. But that's the point, though. Like, Anthony was able to say, like, it's not my cup of tea, but that's the point of the draft. Like, everybody's eyes are different, and that's the
point. Well, and I think I said it, too, like, we were DMing before we came on. Like, especially with the draft in general, but especially with summer scouting. Like, there's just so much projection and – whether or not you believe that a player can do a certain thing or progress to a certain point or improve on a certain trait or whatever. Like, there's just so much guessing at this point. Like, every single person's top 50, including my own, will be wrong by the time we get to April. So it's just a matter of, you see what you see on tape for this past season, and then how it changes this coming year. So but I'm excited to get into your mock. I've seen it, and I will definitely have some I see the vision moments. So it's gonna be good.
Great.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the top 10. So this is a mock. Andrew, where can people find this mock? Is it USA Today?
I didn't put this on USA Today. I was a little bit selfish, and I kept it to my Substack, which is linked on my Twitter, which ironically is linked on the screen here. So,
okay. So if you want to see Andrew's mock, you can go to Andrew's Twitter. I will say what the first 10 picks are, and then Andrew, you can talk about whichever ones you feel like. So he has Arch Manning going first to the Saints. Cade Klubnik going second to Clemson. Caleb Downs going third to the Giants. Garrett Nussmeier going fourth to the Jets. TJ Parker going fifth to the Titans. Peter Woods going sixth to the Panthers. Jermod McCoy going seventh to the Raiders. Caden Proctor going eighth to the Dolphins. Sam Levitt going ninth to the Colts. And Ruben Bain Jr. going 10th to the Patriots. So, Andrew, where do you want to go in there?
I feel like the Caleb Downs – well, for the Arch one I'll get to, but I feel like the Caleb Downs one is one that I think needs defended because they've got Tyler Nubin and Javon Holland there at safety. And I wrote in the mock, which I didn't send you guys my full explanations, I put in there that that defense just needs to be able to make some stops and help out that offense, generate some turnovers, give young Jackson Dart. I will pause for any Mark Gronowski propaganda as always, which it pains me he's at Iowa. But anyway, but no, with Caleb Downs, I didn't want to put him at 3, but it was one of those ones where Cleveland, if they're picking 2, like I'm sorry, Mel Kiper, the Shedeur Sanders experiment is not going well if they're picking 2. And obviously New Orleans is just the new NFL dumpster fire, saving Jerry Jones from having the Cowboys looking like they're run like one right now. But yeah, no, I think Caleb Downs is just one of those ones where between Holland and Newbin and him, they can kind of just, it's a good problem to have, a scheme to do what you want to do with those 3 pieces. I don't know who you want to put where, but I think it's one of those things where you kind of figure that out after the fact. And that's the Giants' problem to solve, not mine. But yeah, I think having those good young pieces of Abdul Carter, Newbin I like a lot. You signed Holland. You have Brian Burns there. You have Downs. That's a lot of playmakers on that side of the ball. Hopefully getting Jackson Dart to be what you want him to be. I'm not as optimistic on Jackson Dart, but I like having a defense that turns the ball over to give him more chances and bail him out if it's not going well, to kind of justify that pick there.
So my immediate reaction is that if the Giants are picking 3rd, there's a really good chance that they have a new coach, and a new coach will want a quarterback that's not Jackson Dart.
I think
that's my theoretical.
I think someone's going to give Dart at least one more year, and I think it's something where, in that instance, the coach maybe wants to see what they have in them. And I think, too, I don't know if we're going to see much of Dart. I think between Jameis and Russell, I think those 2 kind of dominate the year. Even if it's not going well and Brian Dable's going to try to save his job, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I know the Maras are probably so tired of losing. The little bit you've seen of Hard Knocks, every time Saquon Barkley has a good game, I just think it furthers the hot seat, whether they're doing well or not. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that goes for sure.
So, Anthony, anything catch your attention that you want to talk about in that top 10?
Yeah, well, so I'll address the Giants thing first, and then I'll file my complaints. No, I understand. So, okay, I'll say this. Downs is supremely talented. He is the 2nd best player in this class for me. I think if ever there is going to be a safety that goes top 5, which is a tall order, but I think Downs deserves that kind of, potential. It's tough because, yeah, if they're picking 3rd, I think I agree with Jim's point that Dable's out and Joe Shane is out. But that doesn't necessarily preclude the new regime from believing that Jackson Dart can be the franchise quarterback. It almost benefits him to not even play at all. And so then the coaching staff will feel like he's more of a moldable piece of clay. But yeah, so I don't hate not taking a quarterback. And I'm also not a huge Dart guy. But I don't hate not taking a quarterback. And you're also kind of put in a tough spot because I think the best players don't fit their needs. They don't need an edge. They just took Abdul Carter. They don't need really I guess, listen, Peter Woods is such a monster. You could say F it and just take Peter Woods. And I wouldn't, even though they have Dexter Lawrence, and just create this impenetrable Clemson defensive tackle wall. So if you wanted to do that, I couldn't even be mad at it. Slight spoiler, you don't have a wide receiver coming up for a hot minute here. So, that would be like a logical, you would think the Giants would want a receiver. I'm not particularly high on the class either. So taking one at 3 feels like a reach. Your first tackle's Proctor at 8. So would you want to take him at top 3? I would feel a little iffy about it.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a tough it's a tough spot, which is unbelievable that the Giants fall into this luck again if this actually happens, because it feels like every year they're in a bad spot. If we want to go to Arch, I mean, we can have that conversation. I mean, we've had, I've said and other people have said, I just don't think he's coming out. But if we live in the world where he plays well and he comes out, you gotta love the history of, the first round quarterback that the Saints have taken. The last one was Arch Manning or Archie Manning, and now Arch Manning gets to repeat the cycle. That's all fun. But it does feel like just the Mannings, if the Saints have the first overall pick, I just don't see the world where the Mannings want to put Arch in that situation, because they're just such a dumpster fire right now. So yeah, that would be my main issue, but I don't think Tyler Shuck is if you're picking first overall, there's no way you pass on a quarterback to believe in Tyler Shuck or Spencer Rattler. So I think from that standpoint, I think that pick makes a ton of sense.
So Andrew, I'm looking at the Caden Proctor pick at 8 to Miami, and you have an offensive tackle going at 11, and you have an offensive tackle going at 21. How different are your grades on your 3 offensive tackles?
I'll tell you what here, I had so many tabs open. I didn't have my database pulled open here. I only had a couple points separating them. So it wasn't like a drastic grade, but there's nobody that I am in love with yet. Even Proctor, I feel like he had a really, really good year, but I still feel like he can be a bit of a projection even at this point. As far as Malagoa, I think he's another one where I think some of the questions, and we talked about it on the Miami show we did, there's some questions with the size there, and I think it's going to be a lot of the Will Campbell conversation with him that we just had. But obviously Will Campbell went very high, and Patriots are in love with him and happy with that whole situation. But no, I think if he comes out of that SEC schedule again and dominates the way he did, because his best game that I saw from when I was watching him over the summer for Proctor was the Georgia game. And obviously Michael Williams was drafted very high, and a lot of high-profile players on that defense. So he performs when he needs to, and that's why I put him in the top 10 for now as a bit of a projection. I think he could maybe even go higher, maybe be a top 5 pick when it's all said and done. He's got the size, been an established starter, like I said, but I just kind of want to see one more year of that high-level play out of Proctor. But yeah, I mean, for right now, being top 8 with Miami, I put in there Tua. You've got to keep him healthy, because I always feel like anytime he hits the ground, you just don't know what's going to happen. They have Paul there and Ulrich Jackson, and highs and lows. I feel like they're very much a tidal wave of emotion there with those tackles. So I want to kind of give a little bit more stability there is my thought with that mock.
So the reason that I asked for your difference in grades, right? Because the difference between Proctor at 8 and then spoiler Fano going at 21, I think Fano is a better scheme fit for Miami.
I was gonna ask, are we? And I don't know if you thought about this with any of these picks. If Miami's picking 8, are we to presume that McDaniel's back? Because if you're firing McDaniel and you're getting a new coach with a new scheme in there, I think the Proctor pick actually makes more sense. You then probably would question what Tua's future is in that scenario. But yeah, if McDaniel's out and there's a new scheme coming in, then I like the Proctor pick more.
And probably. Then that Proctor pick with Savanea next to him.
Oh my God, that's a freaking monster.
That was my thought too.
Yeah. And I get it, and I'm not mad at it. But it would. Proctor's one major thing is he's just so big that he just doesn't move well. And so putting him in a scheme that likes to spread you out and get these wide zone concepts, I think that would be a question I would have. But yeah, if I would argue that McDaniel's out if they're picking top 10. So I from that standpoint, I don't think it's a bad pick necessarily. And yeah, you probably don't try to pull the trigger on a quarterback because Tua's, I don't know. I guess it depends how Tua plays this year, but I think the Proctor pick makes sense from a need standpoint. I was never sold on Patrick Paul. Really, he might prove me wrong this year, but I didn't quite think he was capable of being like a high end starter. So
yeah, and I definitely think real quick, Jim, just if they are picking top 10, I would think McDaniel's gone for sure. And to be honest, I think even if they don't make the playoffs and get a win, without a win, I think he's on a very hot seat no matter what.
Sure.
Because I feel like every year has just been potential with them. And I like McDaniel's personality, demeanor, everything about him. It's just something's not clicking there. And obviously, after a while, you're paying guys, you've paid Tua, you've paid these receivers. You've drafted pretty well for the most part. Some injuries have kind of affected things. So the roster's pretty good. Proctor, I would think, kind of is a new wave there for that offense.
Yeah, being a Bills fan, I don't want to hate on Miami too much. I could keep going on Miami, but then I realized that's probably not the right brand. I think your first 7 out of your first 17 picks, nothing surprised me. Your pick 18 did, but through 17, I wasn't surprised at all. Do we want to talk about anything else in the top 10, or do we want to go to 11 through 17?
I mean, I feel sort of obligated to address the Jets pick.
Okay.
I just listen. So if you forgot, it's Garrett Nussmeier. From a position and pick standpoint, if they're picking top 5, I think it has to be quarterback because that means that Justin Fields did not have a great season, more likely than not. And honestly, even if unless he just balls out, which I just don't think is going to happen, they're probably still even in the quarterback market. But regardless, yeah, if they're picking top 5, it's a quarterback, I think. I just can't buy the Nussmeier first round hype yet. And Andrew, you are far from the only person that is putting him that high at this point. It's just for me, I'm scared by the frame, the tendonitis, the lack of elite arm talent, the decision making under pressure. So I just can't get there with Nussmeier yet. Could he have a season where I change my mind and I'm in on him? For sure, 100%. But just at this point, he's a day 2 guy for me.
If it makes you feel better, I gave them Nussmeier with the thought of that offensive line you guys have built. I'm pretty sure could keep Attila the Hun out of the backfield at this point.
I'd like to believe that.
And that's the nice part where you've got a little bit more flexibility. And I just feel like the way Glenn and his mentality is, and I think getting the number 18 is going to be a big thing for draft people this year. I think LSU, I don't believe in Brian Kelly, but I think LSU as a whole is going to have a little bit of a down year just because they did lose a lot of talent. But they did bring in a lot of pieces for that passing offense to be a little bit more explosive. So I think it's going to give him a chance to kind of showcase his arm a little bit more. But no, the offensive line for the Jets played a big part in that pick because there are other quarterbacks that I would have put there, but I gave them to other teams with poorer offensive lines because I feel like when you have a bad offensive line, you need a little bit more mobility to kind of make up for that. Whereas the Jets, when they have with what they have built, you can kind of get away with somebody who's a little bit more stationary. The tendonitis obviously has to be discussed, as you brought up. So no, that's why I rolled with him that way.
Listen, the Jets just hired Tanner Engstrand from Detroit. If the plan would be to make him our version of Jared Goff,
yeah,
you could absolutely do that. So I get the logic. I just personally can't get there, but it makes sense for sure. I see the vision, I should say.
Okay, so let's go 11 through 17. At 11, you have the Browns making their second pick, Francis Maui Noah from Miami. The Rams at 12 taking Fernando Mendoza. The Steelers taking Lenora Sellers at 13. Anthony Hill Jr. going 14th to Seattle. Dylan Thieneman going 15 to Dallas. Jeremiah Love going 16 to the Arizona Cardinals. Keldrick Falk going 17 to the Bears. What I notice is pretty much all those guys 17 on up. I think I've seen nearly everybody say that those are like their best players on their board. We're pretty close to like those are the immediate starters. I think the two most controversial ones would be Anthony Hill to Seattle or Dylan Thieneman to Dallas at 15. Meaning I've heard several people say that they're down on those players, but I've heard more than enough people say that they're high on them that it seems like, okay, those are players we have to monitor, but those first 17 picks didn't surprise me.
Yeah, and I think for the go ahead, Anthony, if you were going to say something.
Oh no, I mean I can, but if you want to, you can give your thoughts first for sure.
I was just going to say with Thieneman, with Dallas, I feel like safety has been an question for them for so long, and their secondary, I feel like lives and dies on forcing interceptions. And I know earlier I just talked about how the Giants should have this safety trio to force turnovers, but the Giants have the playmakers in front of that group to kind of make up for it, whereas the Cowboys obviously just traded away Micah Parsons. And this mock, of course, came out yesterday morning before the morning of the trade for Micah Parsons, which we'll get to the Dallas's pick later, which originally will be going to Green Bay. But yeah, I just like Thieneman a lot. He's one of my favorite players in the class. I just thought with Dallas, he would kind of bring a little bit of a tenacity and old school type of sit downhill safety, good range, good run support, can get to the ball here and there in the air as well. So I just wanted to have him there.
Yeah, so Ryan, I agree with this. If Lenora Sellers is in the draft class, I don't see him getting out of the top two. That's my opinion.
Yeah, probably. But the problem is once you declare, you don't know how teams are going to go. And so but if you're of the belief that you'll go top two, I guess. But the problem, this quarterback class is so just mercurial in terms of like what it could be. This could be a quarterback class comparable to 2024. It could also be a quarterback class that's comparable to last year. So like we don't know what really we're going to get. And speaking on Sellers and Mendoza, I both of those picks make sense if they have the kinds of seasons that I and a lot of people think both of them could have. And both of those teams certainly need some sort of optimism for the quarterback of the future. So I don't have any issue with those. And speaking to the Hill and Thieneman picks, the Thieneman one I fully 100% back. Thieneman is also a top 10 player for me. I love his game, and I think he was sorely misused last year at Purdue. So and Dallas absolutely needs safety help. Now could you say that should be an edge guy instead because Mike is out? Sure. But the idea of them taking Thieneman over Jeremiah Love, I fully endorse that, even though a lot of people would probably say they should take Jeremiah Love there. So I wanted to make that point. And Anthony Hill is a guy who easily could wind up being a top 15 talent. He's like 26-ish on my board right now. So he may be a little reachy for me there. But I like the fit with Seattle. And again, he's got that kind of upside, so he absolutely could play his way into being that kind of, that high of a pick. So I pretty much agree with Jim's assessment too. Like 1 to 17, you could nitpick and have issues with a couple picks, but I don't really think there's anything too like crazy controversial.
Actually, the craziest thing in the top 17 is that Andrew is optimistic enough that Pittsburgh is going to win enough games to draft 13.
Hey, that was FanDuel. FanDuel was optimistic enough to give them those Super Bowl odds, which is what I went off of. So, I saw that and I was like, okay, but
well, right. So this would be like in the draft order. It's New England at 10 and it's Pittsburgh at 13. And I would be willing to put money that the Patriots do better in the standings than the Steelers. I don't know how much money I'd put on that. And I'll always gamble responsibly. But
See,
go ahead.
Yes, we all 100% gamble responsibly, no question. No, I was just going to say, I agree with you, but I sort of agree with you from the opposite perspective because when I did my mock, however many weeks ago now, I have the Patriots picking like in the 20s because I think they're actually going to be like a viable potential playoff team. Not necessarily not like a Super Bowl, but like enough to where I think they can make the playoffs, potentially even win a game because I have that much belief in Mike Vrabel as a coach. And for what it's worth, I had the Steelers picking 12. So I actually kind of see like a similar outlook for the season. But if you wanted to tell me that the Steelers are picking top 10, I wouldn't fight you too hard on it. I'm nervous for them. Knowing how Aaron Rodgers can derail your season before you even blink, I would be a little nervous.
Yeah, and I really don't think Pittsburgh's roster is that solid. So even if Aaron Rodgers plays one of the, let's say, the 7 best seasons of his career, I don't think there's enough around him for the rest of the team to have success.
It's not great. It's not a great roster for sure.
I think if they hadn't signed Rodgers and they had just been forced to trot out Rudolph, I think they're maybe a top 3 pick. But I think Rodgers is going to drag them enough to be in the teens, and it's going to screw everything up.
Which is almost, I was going to say, that's almost worse. So you almost would rather have a shitty season, you end the Mike Tomlin era, and then have a fresh start. New quarterback, new era of Steelers football. But now, if Rodgers drags you to a 8-9 season, does Tomlin finally get canned? Do they keep him? What are they, not necessarily, guaranteed that a quarterback falls to you at, it worked out in your mock, but easily those quarterbacks could be taken in the top 10 just if teams trade up or whatever. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens, but I don't feel good about the Steelers' outlook right now.
So from pick 18 to 32, first of all, you have Buffalo picking 32. So I love you already. Right.
I'll be honest. They were tied with odds with the Eagles. And I was like, I know Jim's going to look at this. So we're just going to put the Bills at 32.
I love it.
That's reasonable.
You can play to the podcaster.
Exactly.
Right.
From 18 to 32, the only name that is consistent with where I see them is LT Overton, implying that nearly every other name that you have, Andrew, between 18 and 32, like we could spend a whole we could spend hours on this. So at 18, and in Andrew's mock, he has 3 linebackers going in the top 32. So
I like this.
We're about to have a few linebackers come off the board. At 18, you have AJ Harris going to the Chargers. And then at 19, you have Taurian York going to the Buccaneers. You want to talk about both of those guys for a minute?
AJ Harris, I like a lot. I think he has a chance to go even higher, honestly. If he has the year I think he can have for Penn State, and I think Penn State in general has the year that Penn State thinks they can have. I like his size, provides run support. That's a big thing I like with my corners. I talked about it last night. It's all the NFC North football I watch. The Chargers, again, Jim Harbaugh and that coaching staff, they want physical corners. Their corners right now are Cam Hart and Dante Jackson. I had to look it up because I couldn't remember offhand before I got on here. And it's nothing too impressive, all due respect to them. And I think A.J. Harris could come in there and be the top guy right away, really boost that secondary. And then I just think that Harris is going to have a chance this year to make a lot more plays. I think the pressure that the defense is going to get is going to force a lot more passes and decisions to kind of go either way. The defense in general for Penn State, I think with I can't remember the name of the coordinator coming over from Ohio State.
Jim Knowles.
Yes. I was good. I knew Knowles. I couldn't remember the first name. But him coming over, I think the whole defense is going to look a lot different. I think it's going to put him in a position to really succeed and kind of take that next step in his development. But like I said, he could be more closer to top 10-ish, and it wouldn't shock me. I really like A.J. Harris a lot. And then I'll even touch on, too, just the Torian York pick. Levante David, they got so lucky that he did not retire this year. Because that linebacking group with Servante Dennis and they signed Anthony Walker Jr., who was hurt all training camp to provide some veteran depth, and he was nothing there because he never got healthy. I think this is David's swan song. I think they're trying to go for Lombardi. The roster's built for it, but York's a leader on that Aggies defense. I think that's something Jason Light really holds in high regard. His famous quote over the summer was, "Don't draft assholes." And Torian York's anything but that from everything I've seen. It's a little bit of recency bias too, because I watched the SEC show on Netflix, and he was one of my favorite players that they highlighted on there. Like he just wants to play football. And like, I had to go back and watch the Texas game again, because that was the game they highlighted for A&M in the show, because all he wanted to do growing up was play for Texas, and they didn't offer him a scholarship. And so he went to Texas A&M. And so like, that's the game he gets hyped for now every year. And he plays his butt off last year against them. And I think that's one of those things where I think that's something Jason Light sees, and he wants to build off that, because that's what David is for that whole defense, is just leadership. And I think that's something where they have a lot of young leaders around David. And I think York could come in there, be around that Vita Vea, Kalijah Cansey, Antoine Winfield, and I think he'd fit in seamlessly with that group.
Anthony, anything that you want to add on A.J. Harris or Torian York being drafted in the top 20?
Yes. So the Harris pick, I really have no problem with. The Chargers taking corner makes sense. I mocked Xavier Scott to them when I did my mock. So, similar line of thinking to you. I'm a little sad Xavier Scott's, spoiler, not going to be in this first round. But I like Harris as a player. He's 31st on my board right now. So, in like mid to late first round, I think is a totally fair spot to have him. Really smart, instinctive corner. I think he does a good job with play recognition. Also really good in run support, which Jim Harbaugh will definitely be a fan of as well. So yeah, I think the Harris pick makes a ton of sense. And then for York, I higher than where I have him. For me, he's a day 2 guy right now. I like the speed and athleticism, and I think the Levante David, the idea of replacing him makes a lot of sense. So I get it from that standpoint. I'm just worried about just the physicality, how he'll handle that at the next level. I want to see a little bit more from him, more consistency in that regard. This season at Texas A&M. So yeah, the little too rich for my blood. But yeah, Tampa's taught us by taking Emeka Egbuka that they'll just draft guys that they want for their culture and their team, and not necessarily prioritize position or need. So it's a pick that I could absolutely see Tampa making if they believe in Torian York.
And the position for Tampa didn't surprise me. Right? Like mocking a linebacker is something I've done for Tampa.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
It's the fact that it was York over Sonny Styles and York over CJ Out.
Yeah.
I was more, it's not the position. It was let's say the hierarchy of the players at the position.
Yeah. 100%. I agree.
So up to pick 19, we've had 2 corners go off the board. We've had 2 linebackers go off the board. We've had 1 running back go off the board. We've had 2 safeties go off the board. We haven't had a wide receiver yet. First wide receiver off the board at 20, Jordan Tyson to Denver. 21, Cincinnati, Spencer Fano. 22, Houston, Avion Terrell. 23, Minnesota, Jalen Kilgore. What in there, and like all those for the most part, other than Fano for me. Well, I shouldn't say that. Tyson and Fano, I'm thinking they're going to go higher, but you have them in the first round. It's a first round mock, so like that grading lines up. But Andrew, what would you comment? Let's say 20 through 23.
Yeah, I put in with Tyson. I know they just extended Sutton. I like what they've got with Marvin Mims, and I believe in Bo Nix. I think giving Tyson to him as well. I think Cortland Sutton and him play a similar style to an extent, but I also think they would kind of complement each other in the same fashion. So I'm about giving Bo Nix more means to have success. And then as far as Fano, I think you just got to keep working on protecting Joe Burrow. I know they have Mims and Brown at the tackle positions. I think Fano could move inside to guard for now while they still try to figure out what they've got with Mims, because he was very much a project when they drafted him. So that was my thought process there. And then I only wrote the thing. And then Kilgore, we talked about him last night too. Vikings need secondary help in the absolute worst way. And Kilgore, whether he be a corner or a safety, whatever it is in that, they needed a corner opposite Byron Murphy. I know they have Isaiah Rodgers, and behind Rodgers, they've got Jeff Okudah, which I have no faith in going into the year, if I'm being honest. And Harrison Smith, talking about aging veterans. We talked about Levante David for the Bucs. For the Vikings, it's Harrison Smith, who very well could be having his swan song with Adam Thielen together this year. So I think that's where Kilgore could be a seamless fit into that Brian Flores defense and be a really fun piece for him there.
I love the Kilgore pick at 23 to Minnesota. I know you and I spoke about that off air after the podcast yesterday. Anthony, how high do you have Jalen Kilgore graded right now?
So Kilgore is another day 2 guy for me. I don't think this is like a crazy reach I guess a little bit of a reach, but I think the fit makes sense. He feels like somebody that Brian Flores would like to have in their secondary. It feels like Harrison Smith has become one of those players that like every year we talk about, you got to replace Harrison Smith soon because he's going to retire. And then he just keeps playing and then we move on. And then the next year comes and we say, well, he's going to retire. And then he doesn't and he comes back. But eventually that will happen. So, you're going to want guys that can play on the back end of your secondary. So yeah, I think the Kilgore pick is again a little reachy for me, but I get it. What was the other? Oh, and Fano to the Bengals is interesting. If that's the pick, which I don't hate, but I do just feel like the Bengals defense is still such a mess, even though they got Hendrickson re-signed. So I would go defense for them. But in that scenario, if they take Fano, I almost would frame it as, Orlando Brown's turning 30 next year, and I believe is in the last year of his deal. So, if you have enough faith that Mims can kick over to the left, because I don't think Fano's going to do that at the next level. But if you want to, plan for, okay, Brown's going to be gone next year, we can move Mims to be our left tackle of the future, and then have Fano as a plug-and-play right tackle. And like you alluded to, if you want to start him on the inside, when he comes in, I know I've seen like Jalen Rivers has gotten some praise for the job he's done so far at the guard spot for the Bengals, and they also drafted Fairchild from Georgia. But I feel like Fano would be an upgrade over probably either of them. So yeah, if you wanted to, I'd honestly almost even try him at center if you really wanted to. But that would be my plan for the Fano pick is let's try to plan for him to be the right tackle of the future and then see if Mims can kick over to the other side.
Okay. So picks 24 through 30. At 24, Deontay Lawson going to the Rams. At 25, Danny Dennis Sutton going to the Commanders. At 26, Jake Slaughter going to the 49ers. 27, Malik Muhammad going to the Cowboys. At 28, Zane Durant going to the Lions. At 29, Eric Singleton going to the Chiefs. So I would say I think all of those names surprise me. But at the same time, I'm usually surprised at the names that are 24 through 32 in any mock. Like when somebody does a first round mock, the first place my eyes go are who are the last 8 picks, right? Because usually those guys are typically second round grades. They're not true first round grades, so those will fluctuate more. Andrew, can you sell me on Danny Dennis Sutton in round 1?
He doesn't get a lot of praise. I feel like I'm alone on this island here where I think he can be the next Penn State pass rusher to kind of make it into the league. They've had a good rotation of them in recent years. I like his motor. I like his ability to pursue the quarterback and the running back in the backfield. I like his ability to support the run. I think he has a good amount of tools to get through offensive tackles. I wish he had a little bit more of a pass rush plan at times. But again, now that we've got Jim Knowles as the name in my mind, I think that he is going to, we saw him do really well with JTT at Ohio State and Jack Sawyer, both guys that stuck around for a long time. And even though they weren't drafted super high, they had pass rush plans. They were good leaders on that defense. I think he's going to come in and do that same thing for Danny Dennis Sutton. And as far as fitting him into the Commanders, I think, need a little bit of edge help. I know Dan Quinn also does a really good job of putting his edge defenders in a position to succeed, whether he has them in the ground or standing up. I think he would have a lot of fun using him in a variety of ways to kind of get what he needs to pressure the quarterback. Because offense is humming right now in Washington. It's just fine-tuning the rest of that defense the rest of that way. I think they're right at the doorstep of being a Super Bowl contender. I think they're just 1 or 2 pieces away from it.
I want to add a thought on Sutton, and then I kind of want to ask a question. Just quickly on Sutton, I do think Dan Quinn needs more pass rush help for the Commanders. I think they sort of punched above their weight this past season, so to speak. So I think the position makes sense. I feel like Dennis Sutton just not even like, I don't even think he has good bend, but I just feel like at times he kind of just looks like not a great athlete in general. Like he just kind of looks clunky a little bit, which for a Penn State guy who like looks the part as much as he does, I just wish I saw just more explosiveness and more of that, elite quickness. Even he is obviously like a bigger guy than Abdul Carter is, but I still I'm not totally sold on him from that standpoint. So I want to see a little more from him this year before I would say he's a first round guy. My question is, I guess my question's twofold. One, the Jake Slaughter to the Niners pick intrigues me, because I feel like taking a center round one, you got to be really sold that they're a really good player. And I know a lot of people, I'm actually higher on Slaughter than I think most people are. I've heard a lot of people don't even like him as a top 100 guy. So I want to know, sell me on Slaughter from that standpoint. And then also, like, where does the edge class rank for you at this point in the mock? Because like the next one's going to be LT Overton. We're going to talk about in like a few picks. And I think that's the only other edge. Yeah, that's the only other edge at this point.
And 5 total edges went in round 1 here.
Right. So I mean, without looking, I feel like I would have had more edges go in the first round, but honestly, maybe not. But question is, where do you see the rest of the edge class from this point on in the draft?
As far as Slaughter goes, my thought was I am a bigger fan of him, I think, than most too. So I'm glad that you're on that same boat, because I do feel like, and a little bit of recent bias too. Like, I am a Florida fan, so there is a little bit of that. I feel like that leaks into that analysis with him. I'll be fully transparent. My offensive line analysis, I told this to Jim because we were talking about another show down the road. Offensive line is where if I had my life depended on it, and you told me I need you to have some good, crisp offensive line analysis, I'm probably dead. Just full disclosure. I can get through it, and I have some hits down in my past from doing this for a while, but I have a lot more misses. And now, as far as Slaughter goes, I just feel like he's a safe pick. I think he has a little bit of a higher upside. I think he's technically sound. I don't think there's anything sexy to it. I think something with the 49ers, they've shown they prioritize offensive line. They've had a couple of hits there, obviously in the later rounds even. But I think with Slaughter, Brandel, their center now, I think he's going to be 33, 34. And he's got a little bit of a higher price contract. So I think there's a little bit of a cap situation there, plus age, that could kind of lead into something for them there, especially as they have a little bit of a unique cap situation with all the people they've paid and are going to have to pay. And they've already paid Purdy, so that anytime you pay a quarterback, that obviously you have to have a little bit more flexibility. So that was my thought process there. Was I thought safe pick, obviously, and then also I think when you have a 33, 34-year-old center, retirement's an option. Obviously, if you have a little bit of higher contract, I think that's also going to fit into it. As far as the edge class goes, I had Falk. I think I had him 17. If I remember right, to the Bears.
Yeah, I think that's
correct.
After Falk, that's kind of like where my tier cut is, because I think I just sold you on Danny Dennis Sutton, and I like Overton and a lot of other guys below there, but I think those top tier guys like the Reuben Baines and the Keldrick Falks, I just think those guys, and obviously the TJ Parkers, I think those three guys are going to be your top tier. And I think everybody else is kind of fighting their way to kind of get their placement in the middle there. Not saying that's a bad thing. I want to see more from a lot of those guys. And I think it has a chance to be really talented. I think there could be 7-8 guys who find their way into the first round potentially, or definitely in the first 2 rounds. But yeah, as far as Danny Dennis Sutton, he was like my next guy I was really, really high on. And like I said, that's where Overton kind of just seemed like a fit, as we said, spoiler, just throwing him in there to the Eagles, because that just seemed like an Eagles pick to me. But yeah, there's a lot to prove for a lot of guys, but I also believe in a lot of them at the same time.
I think I see the edge class, not exactly the same players, but like the gist of it is pretty much the same. Like for me, it's Bane, Parker, and Falk are like the three. I gun to my head who's going to be a first rounder. Those three feel like pretty sure first rounders. Bane would be hesitant just medically, but I think the talent's there. But yeah, then after that, because I just went back to, I had 5 edges in my first round. So it's pretty much lines up the exact same way, just with different guys. But like, yeah, there is a cutoff there. And these guys like the Overtons of the world, the Denied Dennis Suttons of the world, there is this sort of like talent gap, and you want to see more production and you want to see more from them a little bit. So yeah, I think I'm pretty in line with you, and it just, I think because we did this too, like when we did the draft team a few weeks ago with Sam Teets, like we weren't particularly thrilled with the edge class. Like I think it showed up quickly that like, oh, there is a drop off in edge talent. So it's I think, and we'll see how the season plays out, but right now I don't think this edge class is going to be one that we're going to, it's certainly not going to be as daunting as the edge class we just had at the very least.
Okay. Anybody else you want to talk about in the top 29?
No, I mean, they all pretty, I don't get Malik Muhammad. I don't get why people love him. He's another one that like I've seen in first round mocks and I just don't get it. So also in that scenario, the Cowboys taking 2 secondary players is interesting.
Well, so
yeah,
that was I had that in there. That was originally going to the Packers. I just put that in there to say that was going to be the Cowboys pick. So imagine the Packers got him at that point.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, I get that. Okay. Yeah,
because that would have been a really good spot for Nick Singleton. Really good spot.
For the Cowboys, yeah. That I would very much endorse that.
Yep.
If that were the pick. But
and then you have back-to-back Singletons going. So you have Eric Singleton going at 29. You have Nick Singleton going at 30 to the Ravens. LT Overton at 31 to the Eagles. Chandler Rivers at 32 to Buffalo. So Singleton and Overton in the first round didn't surprise me. I was kind of surprised to see Baltimore taking a running back, but you don't have to convince me. I'm just surprised. Right? Because more than likely Derrick Henry is still under contract. I would think that the Ravens would invest that at a different position.
I will say when I did my mock, I had the thought in my head of giving them a running back because I do think there is I still think Derrick Henry is a top 5 running back in the NFL. Like in no way am I saying like he's slowing down and we need to like move on. But there is a sense of if the Ravens really like a Nick Singleton, or if a guy like Jeremiah Love gets here, or a Mekhi Hughes or whoever, they might think to themselves, okay, well, we can bring this really talented running back in, not necessarily play them super immediately, but if we think Derrick Henry may be losing a little tread on the tires, we feel comfortable. We still feel comfortable about our running back situation because running the football is such an integral part of their football identity.
Yes.
So I don't hate that pick. I agree with you overall. Like I still think they want to invest in D-line or the secondary feels like where they'd go, but I don't hate that pick. I think there's a logic to it for sure.
Yeah.
Andrew, can you sell me on Chandler Rivers with a round 1 grade?
I've had him higher like in my first mock, and I kind of cooled the Jets because I feel like I was getting a little bit too crazy, but he's
no such thing as too crazy. This is draft investment. It cannot be too
and,
crazy.
and it's the summer for one more technical day before the Saturdays kick off. But yeah, no, he's smaller, and I think that's kind of going to be a turnoff for a lot of teams. But I think for his size, he very much plays with an edge and a chip on his shoulder. And I like his ability to play the ball. I think he can play, like I said, bigger than you would think. I don't know how long his arms are officially going to be. But I think, again, he can kind of surprise you whenever he's playing the ball in the air. I don't know what position a team's going to want to put him in, because I don't know if you can trust him with NFL wide receivers on the outside alone. But I definitely think he has a placement in an NFL secondary to kind of be put in a position to make plays. He was somebody I thought about for the Vikings because, again, I think he needs to be with a coordinator that is a little bit more crafty. But I just thought with the Bills needing the secondary help, I threw him in there. But I'm a big Chandler Rivers fan. The size I wish was a little bit better. And as I'm proving, size doesn't matter. I'm also a big Pons fan as well, who's another smaller corner in the class. Didn't go in the first round, but Rivers, like I said, I like him to play bigger, and he kind of plays with a chip on his shoulder for his size, and I think that's something people are going to appreciate.
So there would be 5 guys if the draft fell this way. There's 5 guys I think I'd be fighting over as to which one would help Buffalo better. So I'm curious where you guys have any of these guys. Caleb Banks, the defensive tackle from Florida.
Mm-hmm.
David Boston, wide receiver, Washington. Antonio Williams, wide receiver, Clemson. Mateo Ugalele from the edge from Oregon. Those 4 immediately are resonating. And then I think David Bailey, and I think he's at Texas Tech now, right? The edge from Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think those are 5 guys that would look really good in Buffalo's scheme. If it fell like this, I'd be shocked if Buffalo didn't go wide receiver.
I think,
oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I think that's fair. For what it's worth, all 5 of those guys you just listed are at least top 40 players. Caleb Banks is in my top 10 because I just think he's a freak of nature and he's awesome when he wants to be.
Go Gators.
So go Gators. Yeah, my issue with Chandler. Here's my official scouting report on Chandler Rivers. Chandler Rivers, the football player, like remove everything physical about him. Chandler Rivers, the football player, is a first-round talent. Like the dude makes plays, finds the ball. I love his feistiness and the playmaking ability. I am sold on Chandler Rivers, the football player. The problem is Chandler Rivers, the football player, is in a 5'8", 184-pound frame with 29-inch arms, and that scares the bejesus out of me. That is like the Tez Johnson syndrome from last year, where I love the player, but Jesus Christ, the measurables are just so horrific that I can't get on board. And, you know, I could absolutely be wrong. I could see him being a dog in the NFL and doing great things, but I just can't convince myself to say that a 5'8", 180-pound corner should go first round. But like watching him play football, it's the same thing with D'Angelo Pons and Indiana. It's the same thing. Yeah. Again, I love the football player. I love everything he brings to the table, but just there's a reason we don't see corners that size at a premium in the National Football League. It's just because the position requires you usually to be 190 to 200 pounds, at least like 5'10", 5'11", and even then you're kind of pushing it a bit. The 30-inch arms feels like, you know, you kind of need that too, especially if you're going to play on the outside. So I get it. I appreciate it. I just can't. I can't do it. I can't. And again, I very well could be wrong, but I agree with Jim. I do think either receiver. I am a big Denzel Boston guy, so that makes sense to me. I do wonder though. Like I know Keon Coleman's not great, but are they really going to take another X? I kind of feel like they would give up on Keon Coleman if they took a Denzel Boston. So I would almost say like a Carnell Tate would be someone that I would look at there. Or if you want like another, if you want like a true deep threat, I think Antonio Williams makes sense. But yeah, I receiver would be the first spot I would go to probably.
Yeah, and all signs with Keon Coleman coming out of training camp is just watch out. Like he's the one, like apparently like there was something like he led Buffalo in touchdown catches in training camp.
I loved Keon Coleman
in games, but in like training camp practices.
I loved Keon Coleman coming out. So I've kind of been disappointed in what he's been so far. I was hoping for more.
He was doing pretty good until he got hurt. And when he came back, he wasn't 100%.
Yeah.
So
it just feels like Josh Allen is just like desperate for somebody downfield to be able to make plays consistently.
Yep.
And he just can't seem to get that. So they need that. They need that, whether that is Keon Coleman or somebody else, or they have to draft somebody. They got to get him that.
Are you guys ready to do some mock drafts?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Okay. So we're going to do some first round challenges on the Draft Professor Simulator. Right down here, first round Fanatic Challenge. A first round challenge is 5 unique 1-round drafts. The simulator will not let you pick the same player twice. So we'll do Jets, Vikings, Buccaneers. Where do I have Buccaneers? Draft. Oh, Buccaneers 19. So we'll do Jets, Vikings, Buccaneers, Bills. So we'll do the Jets. I have the Jets picking first in the draft order. I probably should have the Saints, but that just wasn't the way that I drew it up. So,
sure.
Anthony, who are your 5 best first-round options if the Jets are picking first overall?
Okay. So if we play out the scenario and the Jets actually are picking first overall, first of all, I'll be in a depressive state. Second of all, I will then find optimism because then I know that we're going to get our quarterback of the future. So if they're picking first overall, there is like 0.001% chance that they don't pick a quarterback. Like this has to be whoever Muji and Aaron Glenn decide is QB1 in this draft. Now, at this point, that could be a lot of people. For me personally, my QB1 is Cade Klubnik, so I would take Cade Klubnik there.
Were the next 4 closest choices?
I would keep doing quarterback. I think like Lenore Sellers would be probably my QB2 at this point. And I'm not so worried about trying to. I don't really know what Engstrand's offense is going to be at this point for sure. I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be like a Ben Johnson-esque thing, but I don't think we really need to factor that in right now. So right now for me, QB3 is Mendoza at Indiana. I would take him. I would say hesitantly, I would still take Aller as my 4th option. This is where I think the gap in quarterback is big enough that I would not take a quarterback. Aller just makes the cut for me. So now if it's not a quarterback, and this situation could honestly play out like if they were picking 4th and the first 3 picks were quarterbacks, that could basically be the scenario. So that's essentially what we're acting out here. This is tough.
That's why it's a 5th round challenge.
Yeah, well, and now we're 5 picks in. I mean, listen, I know taking safety is insane, but I do love the idea of Caleb Downs in an Aaron Glenn, being able to learn from Aaron Glenn. So I'm gonna take Caleb Downs there, but you can make an argument for Peter Woods to finally get Quinnen a running partner in the middle, or an edge rusher. I wouldn't hate either, but Caleb Downs is just such a good football player, and the Jets safeties have just not been good since we let Jamal Adams go.
So it's difficult to tell because the Jets are picking first. But what happens when you do a first round challenge on this simulator? Every mock draft adjusts the player boards. We're going to see it better with Minnesota, who's picking 14th on the simulator. So the simulator is going to run through the first 13 picks, and I'll call them out so that we know who's off the board. And then, Andrew, you'll have to come up with, if the first round is going this way, we're going to need 5 different picks. So the picks were Sellers to the Jets, Alar to the Browns, Klubnik to the Steelers, Mendoza to the Saints, Nussmeier to the Raiders, Giles to the Colts, Downs at 7 to the Cardinals, Peter Woods at 8 to Dallas, McCoy at 9, Parker at 10, Gooseby at 11, Bain at 12, Falk at 13. What do you think the Vikings would do?
Probably going to go to Indianapolis to say sorry to all of them for going from Anthony Richardson to Childs. But after they're done doing that, I would probably say, I mean, not to piggyback on what I did earlier in my mock, I'd probably say Kilgore. I would say we'll go with in this spot first.
Okay. So what the simulator does, the second time through, it makes sure that Kilgore is off the board. So Kilgore now went to the Panthers. TJ Parker happened to drop. He was not, because Parker was not available last time. What would the Vikings do in this situation?
Not that they need him, but I mean, if TJ Parker's there, they're going to. Brian Flores is going to steal the phone from Kwesi and at that point take that pick.
Okay. So now Kilgore and Parker are off the board. This time McCoy and Bain and Banks. I think Banks was there before. But yeah. McCoy and Bain are there, neither of which was there before.
See, and I think McCoy's an interesting one because he's somebody that I think realistically could be there if people are scared off by the knee. We just saw it happen with several cornerbacks in last year's class. So, I mean, I would go with McCoy here, but I think realistically that could also be an actual option for them if they're in the middle of the first.
Okay, so now Kilgore, Parker, McCoy are off the board. Bain is there. I'm looking to see how much has changed up here. So like Peter Woods and Caleb Downs switched spots. A couple of different quarterbacks went in a different order. So Kilgore, Parker, McCoy are off the board. What are you thinking?
I've got to look in here. My eyes are bad. I'll go with. I was going to say, if you want to click over there, we'll go with Banks. I think they have Hargrave and Allen, who they're really all in on this year, which I think is going to be a bold strategy. But I actually wrote today for their watch list that I think defensive line is a sneaky need for them.
Okay, so the last one, Kilgore, Parker, McCoy, and Banks are off the board. What would you do?
What corners are there?
Harris is there.
We'll go Harris. We'll make that easy. Could have gone Scott, but Anthony destroyed Chandler Rivers, so he doesn't get anything nice.
Do you think I was because I was thinking about it as you were doing it. I didn't want to interrupt, but is there a world you think, and either of you can answer this, but I guess Andrew could go first. Would they, if Aaron Jones is getting older and his contract, I believe, expires next year as well, is Jeremiah Love an option? And if you believe that he is like a running back that, and I don't, but if you believe that he's a running back worth taking in the top 15, is that like an option? And then you wait to rebuild? Because I do think the corner / safety group is not necessarily top heavy, but I do think there is some good depth that you could wait till day 2 to plug that, part of your defense. So is Jeremiah Love talented enough to where you would maybe make that pick as the Vikings?
So ironically, both Jones and Mason, who they traded for, actually got 2-year mini extensions. So they're actually under contract this year and next.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, Jones is coming off. I actually just wrote it today. Jones is coming off. He's 30 now, coming off a 200+ touch carry season. And but all the talk out of camp has been that Mason's going to lead the team in rushing, and they're going to use Jones as like their receiving option. They want to have the offense be as dynamic as they can for McCarthy. They showed that going out and getting Thielen, but no, I do have running back as a potentially sneaky need, because who's to say Mason isn't a fit and doesn't produce? And obviously Jones is a little bit older, and Green Bay saw something that made them say, hey, we're going to invest in Josh Jacobs instead of you. And obviously last year he said, ha, told you so. And obviously Jacobs had a good year as well. But I think especially the running back position, I think, is a lot like closers in baseball, where you could just fall off the face of the earth at any given moment, and you've got to be ready to pivot to the next guy up at some point. So no, I think there is a world where Jeremiah Love is potentially an option, or somebody else maybe who emerges like a Nick Singleton or somebody else. But I just don't know if Kwesi takes that strategy given his approach to the draft. That's my only thought.
Sure.
So, but no, you're not crazy for thinking that.
Okay, so I'm going to point a couple things out about the simulator. So every single pick that's here is there because a user is picking that player to that team. So that's how everything gets there. When you do a first round challenge, the algorithm is relatively rigid. And the reason why I point that out is that the first round that we got when we did the Vikings, the first picks, unless another user is using the simulator right now, flipping the boards, it's going to be relatively the same picks for iteration 1. You can see that Kilgore is going to the Vikings. Isaiah World, Nick Singleton, Caleb Lomu, Jeremiah Love are off the board, in addition to the players that were off the board for the Vikings. What do you think the Buccaneers do in this situation?
How it go? I mean, they have Ledecky, but what edges are there? I don't think there's going to be anybody that
Overton, Bailey, Ukulele, Sutton.
Take it away. Bad. What linebackers are there?
CJ Allen, Anthony Hill, Sonny Styles.
We'll do Sonny Styles. We'll do CJ Allen.
Okay.
Styles has been a popular mock pick I've seen for them a lot.
Okay, so now the simulator makes sure that Allen is off the board. You can see this time Jeremiah Love fell. Anthony, what would you do for Tampa Bay if the board fell like this?
I had a similar thought process to Andrew. I immediately edge was my first thought. And honestly, I've LT Overton I'm good with LT Overton. I would take him here, but yeah, after that, I'm not excited about the edge,
Okay.
the edge prospects.
So I'm going to
So-
point out that Overton is 13th and Love is 12th. I just
Mhm.
want to point that out because we might see some movement here. So, Andrew, if Allen and Overton are off the board, what would you do for Tampa Bay?
God, Light might take a wide receiver again at this rate. Not really. What corners are there? Just I know they just double dipped on that last year with Morrison and Parrish, but
So Harris is here, McKinney, Abney. I think some people like Devin Moore. I don't know if people like Devin Moore this high. Damani Jackson is still here.
I think I do like Xavier Scott for the record, as much as I'm giving Anthony hell about it. We can give them Xavier Scott because I think he's a little bit different than both Morrison and Parrish. Obviously, Parrish is their nickel, and Morrison, his hip is still a big question. And Jamel Dean's getting older, and he's going into a contract year. So, yeah, we'll go Xavier Scott.
Okay. So observe that Xavier Scott is 46th on the board. So, Anthony, if Allen, Overton, Scott are off the board, Jeremiah Love and Nick Singleton have both dropped. And they're the ones sitting at the top of the board. What do you think the Buccaneers would do?
I think they would try to trade this pick. But since we're not doing that, this is tough because Tampa doesn't really have like an obvious need. I don't
Welcome
think
to my world.
like I wish I was in your world. I don't like having a team that has 5 different needs every draft cycle.
I just cover the Bucks. I'm a Browns fan, so
That's
really,
fair.
I don't
Yeah,
enjoy
you're right.
anything.
But yeah. So I mean, Anthony Hill makes a lot of sense. I know I kind of was saying it's a little reachy, and I still kind of believe that. But I think he is definitely one of the players I could see playing into like a top 15, top 20 slot if he has a good year. And with the pass rush upside that I think he brings, which, you know, as good as I think the linebacker class is, that's probably one of the big weaknesses for me, is there are not a lot of linebackers that I would say offer a ton as pass rushers as well, in the way that like Jihad Campbell did. Anthony Hill is like your number one option in that regard. So I think Todd Bowles would like to have Anthony Hill and, again, be able to use him in different ways on defense.
Okay, so CJ Allen, LT Overton, Xavier Scott, and Anthony Hill are off the board, and TJ Parker drops. Is there a reason the Buccaneers would not select TJ Parker?
Unless the guy taking the card up had a heart attack.
Yeah, so sometimes when you do a first round challenge, you'll get a gimme. So I'm going to call TJ Parker the gimme.
For what it's worth, and I agree that's the pick, I don't think TJ Parker getting to, what were they, 19?
Yep.
I don't think that's like an impossible scenario.
Agreed.
Like based on what based on where Parker is on most people's boards and what we think of the edge class and all that stuff. Like, I don't think it's like out of the realm. I still think he's a top 10 player, but it's not like mind blowing to me if he got to 19.
And quarterbacks are going to push people down too.
Right.
So.
Right.
Yep. So let's do the Ravens at 28 as a group. We'll make this a group project because I want a team that we can. I think with the Ravens, we could pretty much go any position as to we could just pretty much go like best available player. So the draft, LT Overton is who went to the Buccaneers. So he's the top player on their board right now. Jordan Tyson to the Patriots, Maui Noah to the Bears, Lemon to the Chargers, Banks to the Cowboys.
Even your
Abney
simulator
to
wants
the
them to stop the run.
Say that again.
Even your simulator wants the Cowboys to stop the run.
Yep.
Abney to the Titans, Mateer to the Rams, Dominique Orange to the Broncos,
Big citrus.
Antonio Williams to the Rams.
Hell yeah.
The Ravens are on the clock. CJ Allen in a Ravens uniform would be.
I was gonna
Fuck.
say I didn't want to hijack the first pick, but like I am sprinting to the freaking podium if CJ
Well,
Allen is here. You literally
would you-
have Roquan
Would you
Smith
do
on the team.
Fano? But would you do Fano over Allen?
Like, yeah, okay. Fano is actually no. I was gonna say Fano's higher on my board, but actually no, I don't think he is. They're both top 10 players. Like, I would not be mad at if the group outvoted me on it. I wouldn't hate it. But you literally have Roquan Smith on the team. I think CJ Allen literally is the next Roquan Smith. Like, it just feels like it's a great fit. He's a great player. This is going to be another one of those, how did the Ravens get him kind of picks. But I just think it makes too much sense. I also wonder if Fano's like a great player. I don't necessarily know if he's like the best fit for what Baltimore wants in their offensive lineman. So that might be like one holdback I have. But I mean, from a value standpoint, I totally get it.
Okay, so now we're doing the second one-round mock here for the Ravens. So CJ Allen is off the board. Mateer, Orange, Williams were still the picks right before the Ravens. What are you thinking, Andrew?
I was kind of thinking Austin Barber, maybe, if you're looking for a tackle. I think it could be a little rich still. I think if you're looking for a bigger receiver, Denzel Boston's not bad there. I think that'd be an interesting pick for them.
Where are you guys on interior offensive linemen that would go at the end of round one?
To be honest, really the only one that I would fight for at that spot is, well, technically I would fight for Mawanoa because I think he's a guard, but assuming he's not here, I like Iapani Lalulu from Oregon. He gives you center guard flexibility. So he's a good option. But if I'm Baltimore, I probably wait because I don't think I like Lalulu a lot and I think he's deserving of a first round pick. But if I'm Baltimore, knowing that that's not like my biggest need, I probably say just like we'll find somebody later that can potentially be somebody that we can develop and get to be a good starter for us. I feel like wide receiver probably makes the most sense where you're relying on. I mean, Zay Flowers is a good player, but after that, it's Rashad Bateman, DeAndre Hopkins on his last legs. Tez Walker hasn't really worked out. So, a Boston or a Tate makes sense. Chris Bell. Yeah. Honestly, any of those guys.
Andrew, what wide receivers do you have in the range of pick 28?
I would have Denzel Boston in there, Carnell Tate, like he said. I would say either one of them. I think Boston's more of what they would need at that point versus Tate. Mm-hmm. I think Tate, they've got more guys that are in that mold than what they've got with Boston.
Okay, so Allen and Boston are off the board. Dominique Orange just dropped. He was not here before. What would you say? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying I think that's a slam dunk.
Yeah,
pick.
Same.
If Orange is here,
throwback pick for him.
Yep. No, I think that's Baltimore would love him. Okay. He'd be a great fit. He fills a need too. I do think the interior of the D line isn't particularly great either, relative to the whole roster. So that would be a spot worth addressing.
Okay, so CJ Allen, Denzel Boston, Dominique Orange are off the board. Antonio Williams dropped. Do you do the offensive tackles over Antonio Williams? Is there a corner that we like that may not be on the first page, such as Abney, Harris, Muhammad, Jackson?
I
Any of
think just for the sake of throwing a new name out there to talk about somebody, I think McKinney from Colorado.
Yep.
If a lot of their corners are really small, McKinney's bigger. I think he's listed at 6'2". They took Wiggins last year, who's a rail as far as size goes. I think McKinney would give them some size there.
Okay. So Allen, Boston, Orange, and McKinney are off the board. What does Baltimore do? And Christian Miller is creeping his way to the top of the board. But go ahead, Anthony.
I was going to say Christian Miller I saw caught my eye, but Anthony looked like he was thinking about something.
No, I would not be mad with Christian Miller. I like him. Baltimore would probably love him. I was just going to throw out potentially
Always.
If we wanted to rehash the running back argument again. If we wanted to do a Singleton, I don't hate it, but the Christian Miller's another great pick.
Okay. So now I'll do mine for Buffalo, and I will prompt you guys about like who you like at specific positions. So we'll do 5 different positions for Buffalo. So one will be a wide receiver, one will be an interior lineman, one will be an edge, one will be a safety, one will probably be a linebacker. So I think it's going to be one of those 5 positions. So your safety board, do both of you have Thieneman as safety 2 right now?
I do. I don't know if Andrew does. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
behind Downs, yeah.
Okay. So for Buffalo, if the safeties that would be in the range, some people have Kamari Ramsey higher than Thieneman. Not many, but there's a few.
They are entitled to that opinion.
Yes. Okay, so in this case, my favorite wide receiver for Buffalo in the draft cycle is Antonio Williams. He is off the board. So let's handicap the wide receiver board here. So Denzel Boston right now is the highest ranked receiver on Buffalo's board. Do you guys see Carnell Tate going in the top 40?
Yeah.
I think he can get there.
I'm not like super confident in that, but if I had to like bet right now, probably. Is Mekhi Lemon gone? Probably. If he's not, I don't see him.
He is. I don't see him.
He went to the Chargers.
Yeah. I personally don't. I mean, I guess. I don't know. I guess I could still be convinced Boston's a pick, but I just don't know if he's like exactly what Buffalo needs at wide receiver. So I'm not like.
Yeah. Talk about Singleton or Eugene Wilson as players, and then would you take them this high? So, Anthony, do you want to take Eric Singleton?
Sure, yeah. Well, short answer is no, I would not take either of them this high. But for Singleton specifically, I think he's a, very fast, slot, probably focused weapon of a receiver. I'm trying to see where he is on my board.
Singleton reminds me of a Godwin type. I'm not saying that's like what he could be, but as far as like a little bit of a thicker build, movement style, very similar, can surprise you with body control and kind of evade guys that way.
He is. I will say, again, I talked about like the Bills need somebody to win downfield. He is like a true home run threat. He probably is one of the. That's why I asked about Lemon, because I think him and Lemon are probably, and Antonio Williams are probably like the 3 like true home run threat receivers that I think of in this class. But I'm he another one. He's 5'8", 174 pounds. Like I just can't take a receiver that small in the first round. I just, as much as I think he is a very exciting player and has a lot of potential, especially when he gets the ball in his hands, but I wouldn't pull the trigger on Singleton here.
And then, Andrew, would you take Eugene Wilson at the back of round 1?
As far as my Eugene Wilson analysis goes, no, I gave him in my mock because I did 2 rounds. I gave him with my second round pick to the Bills. Actually, I think that's kind of more of where his fit is. I think he would do well in Buffalo, but he's not a burner that you guys need. He's more of a get him in a short area and kind of just let him create from there type of guy. Really thrives on his vision and body control to win and get yards after the catch and sort of thing. So
I think the wide receiver here would be Carnell Tate, and then we'll go through and we'll look at some of the other positions. So at this point, we've taken Thieneman, we've taken Tate. We have 3 more first rounds to go. So as far as defensive linemen go, do you guys have, I guess, Andrew, do you have Orange, Miller, or Graves higher?
I have Graves higher. I also feel like I'm really high on Graves. But I would have no problem with any of those 3. I think they're all in the same tier. I think Orange is definitely the one with the most upside. I think Graves is very much you know what he's going to be at this point. I think with what you want on that Bills front, they're very much we want to keep building and growing. And I don't think Graves does that, but I think Christian Miller has a lot more to turn into, and I think Orange as well. So I would probably lean Orange or Miller. As much as I like Graves more, I'm willing to sacrifice that in this moment.
So, Anthony, how about you? How do you stack Orange, Miller, Graves?
I think Orange is a top 15 player. I love Big Citrus. So it's an easy one for me. And Jim will remember, last year when we were doing mocks for the Bills, I was very adamant that they need a big body in the middle that is a true run defender. And of those 3 guys that you just listed, Orange is that very much so. So if Dominique Orange is there, and I know they just took Deion Walker, we'll see how he does, but I think Orange is a difference maker against the run and can also potentially develop as a pass rusher. So I love Orange, and I think Buffalo would be all over him if he's there.
Okay. So Thieneman, Tate, and Orange are off the board. I've turned the filter on edges. So we've talked about Mateo Ugalele a little bit. Do you guys have David Bailey, Max Llewellyn high enough to take it 30? Andrew?
I had Bailey. I knew I was high on him. I was trying to look. I had Bailey right behind Overton. So I like Bailey a lot, but it was also a very big projection. Like at Stanford, he was very much and I mean this in the highest compliment. He played like the water boy, where it was just like, I've got to get to the quarterback no matter what's happening right now. And like, he wasn't used on run defense. He wasn't used on every defensive snap. Like there was times where I was watching, I think it was the Syracuse game. I remember like I was going through plays and I'm like, when the hell is he getting back in this game? And it's because they just use him whenever they want to pass rush. But now being at Texas, I'm kind of interested to see how they use him. But he's somebody that physically has all the tools in the world, has some pass rush ability. Like I said, no pass rush plan, but he very easily could find himself in the top 20 this year, or he could find himself on day 3. I mean, he is very high ceiling and floor. I don't know how you feel about him, Anthony, but he was fun to watch in both the best and worst ways this summer.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bailey is the definition of DPR. Like he is, you have him on the field to win as a pass rusher, and that's it.
Yeah.
He is not. You are not putting him out there to to defend against the run and set an edge and all that good stuff. He is going to win as a pass rusher, and that's it. So then it just comes down to, where do you take a player like that? I think 30's fair for Bailey. I probably wouldn't go much higher than that. I think he's like 36 or 7 on my board. So, it's
Okay.
I think 30's fine for Bailey. Llewellyn for me is not there yet. Somebody that I would say probably closer to like top 75 player.
Okay.
But I could see the trajectory for him getting him there eventually.
So I'll go Mateo Ugalele from Oregon. I think, based upon what I'm hearing on the player, if he has a good season, he's going to be off the board well before 30. It just sounds to me like he has all the tools. He just hasn't really played a full season.
Yeah, he's got a lot. He needs to put it together. And there's a lot of good stuff to like about him, but there are moments where you're like, not that impressed. So
I feel like if you took the quarterback analysis out of it and just said the same things you said about his brother going into several of his years, it's literally the same thing now with him. Fairly or unfairly, that was just something I felt like going into this year.
No, that's fair. Yeah.
Okay, so as far as linebackers that would go at the end of round 1, where are you guys on Amari Campbell, Sonny Styles, Anthony Hill, and CJ Allen's already off the board, so that's not an option. So between Anthony Hill, Sonny Styles, and Amari Campbell at pick 30, Anthony, how do you triage those 3 players?
Yeah, so Hill, we kind of talked about already. He's actually 22 on my board. I thought he was lower than that for some reason, but I went back and looked. He's 22 right now, so I would be more than fine with him here for Buffalo. Who's the other one we just said? What are we doing? Sonny Styles.
Sonny Styles.
Sonny Styles. Yeah, Sonny Styles. I'm think I'm lower on actually than most people, but I still have him as a top 50 player. But I want to see him just take that next step. But I get it from a, size and athleticism and profile and all that. He's got the goods, so I wouldn't even be mad at Styles here either. Amari Campbell's a later day 2 guy for me right now. I don't think he brings enough to the table as a run defender for me to have him this high. But yeah, Hill or Styles, I wouldn't be upset with either of them really.
So Andrew, how about you? Which linebackers do you have in the range of pick 30? We know that you like Terrene York. Where do you have Styles, Hill, maybe a Drake Bowen?
I would have Hill at this point would be the leader of the groups we've mentioned. After that, I would have Styles. And then from there, after that, I would actually have Whit Weeks. So,
okay.
But Campbell, I actually have a day 3 grade on him, early day 3. But Weeks, I think I have early day 3 as well. But Styles is very much a athlete playing the linebacker position at this point. But he shows a lot of talent at that point. So I think he's somebody for Buffalo. I don't want to say he gives you Edmonds vibes, or he was very much kind of the same projection type, get the guy who tested insanely at the combine and we're just going to get him to play linebacker and figure it out later. But I think it'd be kind of the same sort of philosophy, but that's your problem, not mine.
Yeah, so Buffalo does well with safeties that convert to linebackers. Matt Milano was a college safety that plays linebacker. So I went with Styles as the pick there. If you're new to this simulator, so if you are one of the 200 people watching right now and you're new to this simulator, these picks, if you can get 5 A+ grades, send me the screenshot, please. Right? That means that you are picking the top player on your draft board every single time. So if you can get all A+, that means that the way that your brain processes the picks is actually the same logic the simulator will use based upon the players that are available. So the simulator, generally speaking, always picks the top player on a team's draft board. So 32 teams, 32 draft boards. Each team is by default selecting the top player on their draft board unless you use one of the settings to override that. So anyway, I appreciate that you guys let me talk about my toy.
It's a good toy.
Yeah.
I have a lot of fun with it, so yes. Andrew, do you want to introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are, and all of the content that you make?
Yeah, name's Andrew Harbaugh. You can find me on Twitter at MandrewNFL. All my work's at Bucks Wire and Vikings Wire. I'm the managing editor and lead writer at both those places. So football is my full-time thing, and then it's the same thing here at night on Draft Professor 2 twice this week. So lots of fun. I'm excited for college football to be here. And if you're a fan of those teams, every Friday I have a prospect viewer guide come out. So I have their needs listed, and then I have like a organized prospect watch list. So like if you want to watch this position at noon, I tell you who you should watch at noon. And then if you want to watch somebody at 3:30, 7:30, the late game, I have it from there. And I always try to rotate players in. So like if like this week, obviously Texas, Ohio State filled a lot of those because that's a big game. You're probably not going to get a lot of Texas, Ohio guys listed the rest of the season. So I try to make it so I joke, I want my readers, the Vikings and Bucks fans, to be the smartest fans. And I think knowing who your team could land is important in that.
See, and for them to become smarter, they just need to watch more podcasts. They just
Exactly.
need to watch more Draft Professor podcasts, and we're good. Anthony.
Yep. As always, you can find me at Anthony_Russo97 on X. I am posting all sorts of draft stuff. I've been posting as we've been sitting here because some fun college football is happening right now. DJ McKinney just got an interception, so
Fantastic.
that feels good. Yeah, so you find me there. I've got a Substack now. I've been posting, a couple times this week. I plan to do 3 times a week, for the foreseeable future. So go subscribe to that. I'm also going to be on Draft Professor Friday nights and Saturday mornings, except for tomorrow. But after that, I will be on every Friday night and Saturday morning. We're going to be doing game previews, and eventually we're going to do position rankings. So plenty of good college football and NFL draft stuff coming down the pipe soon.
So thank you, both of you, for being here. So Draft Professor is somewhere between 24 and 91 people that podcast on the draft. There are 24 people like Anthony and Andrew that show up once a week. And by 24 people showing up once a week, we make about 13 shows each week. So we could not do this without Anthony and Andrew. We have draft content every day. Some days we're doing a game preview. Some days we're going to do position rankings. One of the draft professors is putting together a game show. So we will have a draft game show coming soon to a podcast near you. So the best thank you can give is to hit that subscribe. There are a lot of you watching right now while college football is on. So I would like to say thank you and go to YouTube and hit that subscribe, please. But for the 91 podcasters at the Draft Professor, for Anthony, Andrew, myself, thank you so much for watching. And we will see you on a podcast again on Tuesday. Taking the weekend off. Thanks, everybody.